Hey, that's Mom. Stufflotion777 here today to talk about as you can tell from the video, my experience before and after my gallbladder removal surgery. Because, in case you guys didn't know, yes, I did have to get surgery to get my gallbladder removed because I was having a few issues with it. But what are those issues? Well, since this is a story, let me start from the beginning. Now, when I first started experiencing symptoms of inflammatory bowel disease, aka IBD, I didn't think much of it. I didn't even know what IBD was at the time. All I knew is that I found it really weird that I was waking up in pools of sweat every night when I wasn't stressed, I wasn't hyperventilating, it wasn't hot in the room, I was just in a pool of sweat when I woke up for some reason. And that is one of the first symptoms that I read when I first started having my serious issues, and I decided to look into the matter more because I thought it would be inflammatory bowel disease, even though, spoiler alert, it did not end up being inflammatory bowel disease. Or, that was probably part of it, I'm guessing, but it eventually became something much more severe. So, fast forward a few months, and at the school I was going to at the time, between Christmas break and Thanksgiving break, I was one of the students that was going in person, but during that time frame from Thanksgiving break all the way to Christmas break, everyone was going virtual for just that amount of time to attempt to cut down on COVID possibly being spread. And during that time, I woke up in the middle of the night at like 2 o'clock one night, and I was like, what's happening? Why am I awake? This doesn't happen too often anymore. And then I started feeling a really, really sharp pain in my stomach. And believe me when I tell you, that is the worst pain I have ever felt. It started out not too bad. I thought that it may just be something stuck in my stomach, and I need to get it out of my system. I need to excrete it. So, I went to the toilet, sat down on it. I tried to defecate, but I was unable to for some reason. And the pain just kept getting worse and worse. No matter what I did, standing, or if I stood up when I was sitting down, my stomach, it felt like it constricted itself more. If I sat down, I felt like it constricted itself. If I took a step, if I simply walked, it constricted more. If I tried to lay down, it constricted more. Even if I breathed, it still constricted more and more with every few passing seconds. And it was absolute agony. So, my stepmother, who at the time, and yeah, she technically still is my stepmother, but I have disowned my father. So, that's why I'm saying she was at the time. But yeah, she ended up taking me to a hospital to see what was wrong with me, and they did some tests. I had either MRI or CAT scan, one of the two. I think it was a CAT scan, and they found out that my small intestine was inflamed, which is linked to inflammatory bowel disease. However, that was only the beginning, because these issues kept on continuing more and more. It didn't seem like it at first, I thought it was getting better. Then a month later or so, I woke up again and I felt that pain. And I knew that I couldn't just go to the hospital again. I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I just laid back down and forced myself to go to sleep, breathing as slowly as I could to try not to make the pain worse. Thankfully, I was able to. But around mid-February, I believe, it got bad again. I woke up that time in the morning, but I had eaten some chicken the night before, fried chicken, and I thought that, yep, it was the small intestine being inflamed again, because that's what happened last time. Why wouldn't it be the case this time? And yeah, it may have been inflamed, but there is a bigger issue that I will get to a bit later on in the story. Now, of course, there's the whole process. I ended up vomiting a lot. Again, if I didn't mention, I vomited the first time as well. And after that, I thought, well, if vomiting helped both of the times and I only needed like half an hour to feel perfectly fine again after I end up vomiting, then wouldn't that be a fine way to fix it? Just make myself vomit if I can't make myself defecate? And it seemed like that at the time. So, fast forward around a month later, I snuck my switch to my mother's house because I was grounded from it, and my father was accusing me. He was telling my mother allegations about how I broke into his safe to take my switch, and I broke into his safe to take everything that I did. Like, for one, why the fuck do you put your safe in your closet, of all places, where it's extremely easily accessible? 2, why do you leave your safe wide open? And 3, why not only do you leave it wide open with my stuff in there, but also a gun in there with my stuff? Because if I did break in the safe and I didn't just want to get my switch, because keep in mind, at the time I was having a lot of suicidal ideation, and he supposedly, oh, I'm the most valuable thing in his life. Bullshit. If you fucking leave that shit wide open, if you leave the safe wide open with my stuff in it, and you have a gun right on top of it, then clearly you're expecting something to happen. Or else you wouldn't just leave the safe wide the fuck open. But, anyway, back to the main point. Sorry about that. I digress. So, I ended up moving back in with my mother, and in the first few days, my little sister showed me how to, not make ramen noodles, but kind of a little spin on them, where you put some soy sauce, some brown sugar, some other seasoning, some butter, some other things on it, and it's sort of like Chinese noodles in a way, and it was really good. But that night, the stomach pain again. So, I made myself vomit, and it didn't help much at all. So, I tried to make myself vomit more. After about 3 or 4 times, it worked, and I didn't have the pain for the rest of the night. But over the next few months, it got more and more consistent. One of the times, when I had made myself vomit like 6 times, which is, even for this, an unhealthy amount of vomit. Like, forcing yourself to vomit is never healthy, but if you do it 6 times back to back, that is extremely unhealthy, but I just couldn't deal with the pain. Like, no joke, after I moved back in with my mother, I was perfectly fine mentally. But just the physical pain of the just the abdominal pain alone was enough to make me want to kill myself, just so I didn't have to deal with that pain ever again in my life. And it happened a few times after that. One time my mother someone suggested to her to give me some ibuprofen and lay a heating pad on my stomach. So I did. The first time I tried that, it helped. The second time I tried that, it slightly helped, but it didn't absolutely help and just was a miracle like the prior time. And after like it was either one or two times after that, my mother was like, okay, this has happened enough. We need to see what's going on, because it's clearly something more than your small intestine being inflamed, or this wouldn't be happening that consistently. So, I went to the doctor, and we discussed possibilities of what it could be. I thought that it was either inflammatory bowel disease or inflamed bowel syndrome. Sorry. I thought that it was either inflammatory bowel disease or inflamed bowel syndrome, IBD or IBS. And they did some blood work, suggested to wait around a week or two before going to a quote-unquote more professional doctor. And that's really the best way I could describe it. But like, a place that actually has the machinery, because the place my mother and I went to was really just a place where, like, if your child has a cold or something, it doesn't have any equipment to deal with serious things like the issues that I was having. So they did some blood work. We talked about the possibilities, and they suggested that I go get a ultrasound. So a couple of weeks later, we're at the ultrasound, and a few days after the ultrasound is done, my mother finally got the word back, and I had gallstones. Now, if you guys don't know what gallstones are, and what makes them cause the stomach pain, gallstones, as is obvious through the name, are inside of the gallbladder. And when you are eating food, some of it has some trouble going through the intestines. So your gallbladder squeezes out bile in order to help it go through the system. However, with the gallstones, the bile is blocked and will not get out, which is the reason why there's that extreme abdominal pain, because the gallbladder just keeps trying, despite the blockage caused by the stones, it keeps trying more and more to squirt the bile out, and the food can't get through the intestine, so it starts causing extreme, unbearable, excruciating pain. And when I say excruciating pain, I mean like, I've crashed into a barbed wire fence before, and I'd rather do that again. I'd rather get kicked in the balls again, like the several times I have before. This type of excruciating pain. My mother, someone who's given birth 5 times, or, sorry, 4, not 5. But yeah, my mother, who's given birth 4 times, says that she would rather go through says that she would rather go through giving birth to her first 3 children, my big sister, me, and my little sister, than go through that gallstone pain again. Because, spoiler alert, yeah, She did have a lot of gallstone issues herself, but she had to wait a lot longer to get them dealt with than me because she was pregnant with me at the time. So, a few more times in between the surgery, I had that pain again. And I ended up having to get the surgery moved up because the pain started to get more consistent. So, the day of the surgery, I'm a bit nervous, of course. I know that surgery does have its downsides at times, and it can be extremely risky and dangerous, even if the people performing the surgery are absolutely the top level, the most medically qualified professionals there is. It still can be a huge risk to get surgery. But both my mother and I thought that it was worth the risk so I didn't have to deal with the abdominal pain anymore. And we went in. I was pretty nervous. They had me get out of my clothes and into some scrubs, and also out of my underwear, and putting on some, I don't know what socks you call those, but like slip-resistant socks that they give you at hospitals. And they had me put on some scrubs that covered my entire body, including my penis area that would normally be covered by the underwear, which they had me take off. And the reason why these places do this is because when you're going in there to get a surgery, and they're operating on your body, so they need to make sure there's nothing in the way. Like, let's say they're operating on your stomach, and they let you keep your shirt on. Well, then some lint could fall in to your stomach and cause an infection, which could be really dangerous in the long run. So that is why they have you put those scrubs on. But anyway, yeah, I went through with the surgery, and by the end of it, when I woke up, the anesthesia was still pretty heavy. I was a bit sore from the surgery, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the abdominal pain that I've had several times before then. For around a week or so after, there was a bit of a sharp burning pain, but that was, at least I believe it was, simple aftermath of the surgery, and the soreness that I had after the first day was just turning into more of a sharp burn. But thankfully, that only ended up lasting a week, and I have not had to deal with those since. Now, I know some of you guys may be doubting it, but I have the surgery scars to prove it. Right here, and right here. And then they also make an incision in the belly button, which has already healed completely. So, yeah, I went through that surgery and haven't had to deal with the pain since. So, what has life been like since my surgery? Well, I got the surgery in early June, so I can't really say too much so far. Because, let's see, June to July, July to August. It's been like 2 days, and it will be only 3 months of me having the surgery. So, I can't say too much at the moment, but what I will say is that the surgery was definitely worth it, no question about it. I haven't had to deal with any of the pain since, and the only real downside to the surgery is, of course, as you likely know, the gallbladder does help with excretion, aka helping waste exit the human body. So, when I need to defecate, more often than not, it will be extremely runny and diarrhea-like. rather than solid feces. It will be extremely wet and in a ton of pieces, like diarrhea is. So, I rarely have. I When I defecate now, it's usually much more runny, and it can burn a lot more because oftentimes, because I don't have a gallbladder anymore, I have much less of a filter of how long I'm able to keep my bodily waste in. So sometimes I'll have to defecate like 3 to 5 times in 2 hours, which causes quite a lot of pain in my anus. And that's the only real downside, but yeah, ever since I've got the surgery, life has been much better. I haven't had to deal with any of that pain since, and I'm so glad that I don't have to anymore. Now, I'm extremely thankful that that the insurance that my mother had for me was able to cover my surgery, because if they weren't able to cover my surgery, I legitimately don't know if I would be here at this point, because that was becoming so consistent and the pain was so much that I was legitimately debating killing myself to not have to deal with the pain anymore. However, thankfully, all that is gone. So, even though they're never going to watch this, I want to thank the people who allowed this to happen. The people who work for my insurance and my mother's insurance, and, of course, the several amazing doctors who are extremely calm and patient, helping me throughout this entire ordeal over around half a year. This hasn't been the most amazing experience, having to deal with all the gallstone issues, having to deal with all the abdominal pain. But if it weren't for these amazing doctors, then I don't even know if I'd still be here, because that pain was just too much to bear. They helped me find out what the pain was, why the pain was happening, what caused the pain, and they helped me get rid of what was causing the pain. So, I want to thank you all, even though I know you're not watching the video. You all are truly amazing people. Thank you to every single doctor, not just watching this video, but just at all. Because you risk your life every single day, and you risk other people's lives as well, just to help people. Just to sometimes perform extremely dangerous surgeries, just to possibly repair someone's life. Sometimes just a simple flu shot. But it still could, the simple flu shot could save someone's life. And doctors get passed up on way too much, despite all that they do. Not just in our country, not just for our country, but for the world and around the world. So thank you. Anyways, guys, this has been Typhlosion 77, and I'm out of the house. Bye!